Imagine waking up in a place where your freedom is stripped away, a place called prison. But what does this experience look like across different countries? Welcome to an exploration of the unseen. Today we're taking a journey behind the bars of the most formidable prison systems in the world: Russia, China, and the USA. This is not a glorification of crime or imprisonment, rather a dissection of the conditions that exist within these systems. We're aiming to understand how these nations handle crime and how their methods of punishment differ. From the frostbitten gulags of Siberia to the tech-infused correctional facilities of China and the high incarceration rate prisons of the USA, we'll examine the stark contrasts and surprising similarities. Each system carries its own set of challenges and its own methods of upholding justice. Could the country you're in determine the severity of your punishment? Let's dive deep into the prison systems of Russia, China, and the USA. Russia, a country known for its strict laws and harsh prison conditions, has a complex prison system. Let's delve into the intricacies of Russia's prison structure. The nation's prisons, known as the Zone in local parlance, are home to an estimated 600,000 inmates, according to data from the World Prison Brief. This positions Russia with one of the highest incarceration rates in the world. The conditions within these facilities are often grim and severe. The prisons are notorious for overcrowding, with multiple inmates frequently crammed into tight spaces. In some instances, 3 prisoners are squeezed into spaces meant for 1. This overcrowding leads to a lack of basic hygiene and sanitation, which in turn contributes to the spread of diseases. Moreover, the system is entrenched with human rights issues. Reports from Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch highlight the use of torture and other ill treatment as a common practice within these facilities. Inmates often face physical abuse and psychological torment, with some even being denied necessary medical treatment. Such conditions are a grim reminder of the violation of basic human rights. The Russian prison system also follows a hierarchical structure amongst the inmates, with the concept of thieves-in-law, or vori v zakon. These are the criminal bosses who often have more power than the prison authorities themselves. They control the distribution of goods, maintain order, and even have their own set of laws and punishments. However, it's not all doom and gloom. There have been ongoing reforms to improve the conditions, with new prison facilities being built to alleviate overcrowding. Steps are being taken to address the human rights issues, though the progress is slow and there's a long way to go. So, what does this all mean? The Russian prison system is a world characterized by harsh conditions, human rights violations, and a complex social structure. It's a place where survival is tough and freedom is just a distant dream. In Russia, it seems like the punishment goes beyond just losing your freedom. Now, let's move to the east. China, a country that has been in the spotlight for its lack of transparency in its prison system. China's prison system, known as the Laogai, is a complex and opaque institution. The nation doesn't readily share information about its prisons, making it difficult to paint a clear picture of what life behind bars looks like. However, through various reports from human rights organizations and testimonies from former inmates, we can piece together a rough sketch. China, with its population of over 1 billion, reportedly holds an estimated 1.5 million prisoners. This figure, though, is a conservative estimate, and the true number could be significantly higher. The conditions within these prisons are often described as harsh and inhumane. Inmates are subjected to long hours of forced labor, producing goods ranging from tea to electronics. The food is described as barely edible, with many prisoners suffering from malnutrition. Sanitary conditions are poor and overcrowding is common. Alongside the physical hardships, the psychological toll on the inmates is immense. The Chinese prison system emphasizes reform through labor, a philosophy that often translates into brainwashing and psychological manipulation. Inmates are subjected to thought reform sessions, where they are pressured to confess their crimes and express gratitude towards the government. But perhaps the most alarming aspect of China's prison system is the reported abuse of human rights. Accusations of torture, wrongful imprisonment, and lack of fair trials are common. In many cases, prisoners are denied access to legal representation and the opportunity to appeal their sentences. What's more, the nation's use of the death penalty is of significant concern. China executes more people annually than the rest of the world combined. However, the actual number is a state secret, adding to the overall lack of transparency. It's important to remember, though, that this information is based on limited and often unverifiable reports. The Chinese government strongly denies these allegations and maintains that its prison system is just and humane. In China, the uncertainty and lack of transparency seem to add another layer of punishment. Finally, let's take a look at the USA, a country with the highest incarceration rate in the world. The American prison system is a topic of great debate and scrutiny, often criticized for its sheer size and issues surrounding inmate treatment. The United States has over 2 million people behind bars, dwarfing the prison populations of most other countries. This staggering figure is partly due to mandatory sentencing laws and the war on drugs, which have both significantly increased the number of non-violent offenders serving time. The conditions within American prisons vary greatly. Some facilities, particularly those privately run, have been criticized for overcrowding, poor sanitation, and inadequate healthcare. On the other hand, there are institutions with robust rehabilitative programs offering education and vocational training to help prisoners reintegrate into society upon release. Yet, these positive examples are more the exception than the rule. One of the most pressing human rights issues within the American prison system is the use of solitary confinement. Considered a form of psychological torture by many, this practice involves isolating prisoners for 23 hours a day, often for weeks, months, or even years at a time. This severe form of punishment has been linked to a range of mental health issues, including depression and psychosis. The racial disparities in the American prison system are another cause for concern. People of color, particularly African Americans and Latinos, are disproportionately represented in the inmate population, reflecting systemic bias in the criminal justice system. Though steps are being taken to address these issues, progress is slow. There's a growing consensus that the American prison system, in its current form, is not sustainable. The focus needs to shift from punishment to rehabilitation, and from mass incarceration to more effective and humane forms of justice. In the USA, the sheer number of prisoners is a punishment in itself. It's a stark reminder that the land of the free still has a long way to go in ensuring justice and fairness for all. Now that we have an understanding of each country's prison system, how do they compare against each other? Let's dive into the deep end and begin our comparison. We'll look at three main aspects: the conditions of the prisons, the number of prisoners, and the human rights issues. First off, let's talk conditions. Russian prisons, known as the Zone, are infamous for their harsh conditions. Inmates often live in overcrowded, unsanitary conditions, and physical violence is common. On the other side of the globe, Chinese prisons are notorious for their labor-intensive regimes. Inmates often work long hours in factories or fields, with little regard for their health or safety. As for American prisons, while conditions vary widely, many are criticized for their tough-on-crime approach, leading to high levels of violence and inadequate healthcare services. Now, let's look at the numbers. The United States, surprisingly or not, leads the world in terms of the number of prisoners. With more than 2 million people behind bars, it has the highest incarceration rate globally. Russia follows, with nearly 1 million inmates. China, despite its enormous population, has fewer prisoners than Russia and the US, around 1.5 million. But remember, these are just the official figures, and the reality could be quite different. Finally, we can't ignore the human rights issues. All three countries have been criticized for their treatment of prisoners. In Russia, allegations of torture are widespread. China has been accused of using prison labor for profit and suppressing political dissent. Meanwhile, the US has faced criticism for its use of solitary confinement and the racial disparities in its criminal justice system. To conclude, it's clear that each of these prison systems has its own unique set of challenges. Russian prisons are known for their brutality, Chinese prisons for their labor exploitation, and American prisons for their high incarceration rates and racial disparities. It seems like each prison system, while different, has its own unique challenges. So where's it better to sit? It's a question with no easy answer. We've journeyed through the prison systems of Russia, China, and the United States, each presenting its unique set of challenges and conditions. From the harshness of Russia's prisons, the strict regimentation in China's facilities, to the high incarceration rates in the United States, we've seen the complexities and nuances these systems carry. But why does this matter? Why should we concern ourselves with these systems that exist mainly in the shadows of our societies? The answer lies in the fundamental principles of human rights and dignity. Understanding these systems helps us advocate for better conditions, promote reforms, and ensure that even those who've made mistakes are treated humanely. In the end, it's not about choosing the best place to be imprisoned. Rather, it's about creating a world where prisons are places of rehabilitation, not mere punishment. Prison isn't a place anyone would choose, but the country where you're imprisoned could significantly impact your experience.